on LinkedIn, and join me live is the one and only Mark Metry. So honored. Mark is actually in the car, so I hope we don't lose you. And uh,
Yeah, me
and
neither.
today, yeah, and welcome to the weekly show of Classroom Without Walls, episode 101. My connection is not the best either. So today we're going to discuss how to build a profitable podcasting business. And Mark has another appointment, so we are going to shorten our interview to 30 minutes. So if you are live with us, if you have any question related to podcasting and how to run a profitable podcasting business and any question for Mark, please leave them in the comment section. And again, and we only have 30 minutes today. And let us know where you are joining us live from, social media wise and geographically speaking. We are live on LinkedIn and Facebook and Periscope and on YouTube. Hello, everyone, and happy holidays. This will be the last episode of this weekly live streaming show before I head to Singapore on Saturday for my entrepreneurship immersion. So in Singapore, I will still be going live, but not doing this type of interviews. And stay tuned for next year. We'll be back in January. So before we get started, just a very quick introduction of Mark, just in case you are in a cave, you don't know who Mark is. This guy is absolutely amazing. And Mark is a Forbes featured entrepreneur, is a TEDx speaker, and also on Amazon Prime's docu-series called The Social Movement, which sounds really exciting. And Mark
It is.
hosts, yeah, one of the most popular podcasts, which I'm a huge fan of Mark's podcast called Humans 2.0, which is one of the global top 100 podcasts, and really amazing. If you never had a chance to check out his podcast, I highly recommend. And Mark, thank you so much for joining us live, and welcome to the show.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. And, my apologies. I'm in the car. I'm actually at my sister's place out in New York, and I'm really bad at time management. I didn't want to cancel this. So I hope people can still hear and see me. But yeah, thanks for having me.
We can hear you, but we can't really see you that well. But it's okay. Yeah, the content is what matters. Yeah. And I just want to dive in and I have already been a fan of you, but the more I get to know you, the more I'm like, wow, Mark is just so amazing. And so even though you are only 22, is that right? 22 years old, but you have
Yeah.
been on this journey of becoming and being an entrepreneur for quite a few years, and when you were 12 years old, you started a YouTube channel and gained 35K subscribers. That's like amazing. And this is not it. When you were only 15 years old and you already started a six-figure business, and many people are still trying to get to that goal, even though they have been an entrepreneur for quite a few years. And only 2 years ago, you launched your amazing podcast, Humans 2.0. And within a year, this podcast got ranked as one of the global top 100 podcasts. That is just like amazing. So I have two questions for you regarding this journey. First, what inspired you to become an entrepreneur at such a young age? And the second question is, what inspired you to start this podcast?
Yeah. So again, thank you for having me on. And, what inspired me to be an entrepreneur? Well, honestly, I never really thought of it that way. To be totally honest, the first time I ever heard that word was when I was 19 and I was getting interviewed by some guy at the Huffington Post. And he used that word to describe me. And I was like, wait, what does that mean? And so, for me, like I have memories all throughout my life, like in second grade or that online stuff that you were talking about as I got older as a teenager. To me, it was just about being resourceful. To me, it was just about doing stuff. I wasn't an athlete. I wasn't good at school. I wasn't an artist. I didn't fit kind of into any of these labels. And so I just kind of hopped onto this internet stuff as just a kind of a way to express myself. So yeah, that's how I kind of got into it.
That's amazing. Hey, Gareth, thank you for joining us. Mark is actually in the car, and like this is actually better than when he just showed up. So focus on the
It's all,
comment.
yeah, exactly, man. It's about saving energy. Don't turn the lights on. You got to be sustainable, brother.
Oh my God, I love this. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, only about 2 years ago, and you launched your podcast, Humans
Mm.
2.0. I know on LinkedIn we have so many people joining us live on LinkedIn. And let me know if you have. Most people probably have subscribed. If you haven't, let me know, and I will send you the link. So as I mentioned, you only launched your podcast 2 years ago, and within 1 year, you got ranked to a very high level. So reflecting on this journey, I was thinking in terms of podcasting.
Mm. Yeah. Um, so for me, when I started my podcast, um, it was just a new thing that I tried to do because I remember when I got the idea for it in the middle of 2017. Started sort of my own personal journey of kind of living life in a new way, and I had started to do a ton of different things. I had started a new business. I had picked up a ton of habits, and for anyone else who's also on a similar journey, it's super challenging. And so for me, I just kind of got the
Mhm.
idea to start a podcast because I had a ton of problems that I just didn't have solutions to. And so I just sort
Wow.
of strung it together, kind of started it, didn't really August of 2017, didn't really take it too seriously at all. And it wasn't until like the beginning of last year in 20, having marketed just when I was like maybe 12 years old. And I just sort of, kind of look at this. I kind of got like a spidey sense that this could be something bigger than it is. And I just
Mhm.
began to get way more serious about it. I began to put out more episodes. I began to use LinkedIn as a marketing, promoting, sort of exploration tool, and a little bit. But eventually, I began to get more interesting guests. I began to get in contact with quote unquote higher people in my industry. Um, and then thing in August, my show in the top 100 next to people that, when I had
That's
first sort of
amazing.
started my journey, I looked up to like Gary Vee and NPR and Tim Ferriss. And then that just kind of began to slowly but surely kind of it.
Well, that's amazing, and it's very interesting for me to hear. And even though you mentioned, you didn't really think much about this, didn't treat this very seriously, but you have interviewed so many amazing people like Seth Godin, Tim Ferriss, and Vishen Lakhiani, and John Lee Dumas, and so many. So share with us, how did you get their attention? How did you book those people? Have you ever been rejected? Did you ever get any rejection from some people you reach out to? And how did you recover from that? So share with us. I'm sure many people, they want to kind of, those people who have a podcast, who have a show, they want to influence some of those high profile people. So what is your secret, if there is one? Did you hear that
Hello?
question, Mark? Yeah, I lost you kind of first.
Yeah,
Did you hear
yeah,
my
I'm sorry
question?
about that. Yeah, yeah. So you asked,
Oh,
how
no
do I get in
worries. So I
contact?
asked, Yeah.
with these people.
Yeah, how did you book those high profile people, and if you ever got a rejection, and how do you recover from that?
Yeah, definitely. So right now I'm kind of at an interesting point where obviously it depends, but I can reach out to a lot of different people and I can basically get a yes. Like yesterday, I was interviewing the co-founder of Netflix.
I saw it.
But
Yeah.
also, yeah, but also like for example, today I had my assistant reach out to somebody and they said no, they're not interested. And so, it's always going to be a game of yes, no, yes, no. My motto is, if you ask 1,000 times, 999 times you'll hear no, but one time you'll hear yes, and that yes will be worth it to make up the other 999. And so right now, I can tell you at the beginning is probably the hardest. And honestly, I think for me, probably my age was a big advantage for me. Like when I had started, I was like just turning 20 at the time. And so, you get an email and you're like, hey, there's like this 20-year-old and he wants
That's
to talk to you
amazing.
and interview on this podcast thing. But honestly, the way that I did it was through, at first it was through LinkedIn. I realized that a lot of people that, maybe had like 500,000 followers on Instagram didn't have too many followers on LinkedIn. And so I would just reach out with a personalized connection request and say, hey, I'm Mark. I'm 20. I run this podcast. I talk about X, Y, and Z. And then as that kind of grew, I really realized that the way to get in contact with these people is all about direct association. It's all about who you know and who they're friends with. So, for example, um, you know, probably like one of my first big guests that I got on, Seth Godin, which I know you've interviewed. I remember I got him on because, I had interviewed like three of his previous friends before, and I sent him an email and I said, hey, Seth, I interviewed, this person, and that person. And I know that, Seth directly knows them that, they do that. And so if you can get, I mean, an introduction is best, but if you can get just like the friends of who they've had on before and, kind of approach it from that different angle, you could do, if you have a different like angle of credibility. So, like, for example, everybody today has a podcast in terms of like the whole marketing, LinkedIn business world. But if you approach it from a different angle and you say, hey, I host a podcast, but I'm also the CEO of, I don't know, a 300 person company, then that may give you credibility in a different sense. Like in my case, the fact that I can say I'm in an Amazon Prime docuseries, or I will be next year, that gives me a lot of credibility too. So it's kind of looking at it from different angles, and then also understanding that, like I said, there's more podcasts out there than ever. And so if you can have, a bit of empathy and, kind of look at somebody who's high profile and just imagine how many requests they get to be
Oh,
on podcasts and try to find a way to distinguish, to separate yourself, to make it as convenient as them. So it's just a simple yes. I think you'll go far. I think you'll go a long way.
wow, I love this. And I totally agree. I think, you need to figure out what is really unique about you. For me, and I also approached Seth Golden, but I used my story as a college professor. I know Seth Golden in particular, he doesn't really like the traditional educational system. And I don't like it either. And I came from educational background. So really, that's something really unique about me. I think there are very few educators who kind of disrupt the system that the way I do. So that is kind of my unique selling point for everyone listening to this right now. And I want to encourage you to discover what is something really unique about you that allows you to approach people and to sell your stories. And so those are some really, really great tips. And just keep going. And look at all those people that you interviewed today. Every day I'm like, wow, that is incredible. So like clearly your podcast is taking off. And I think hosting a podcast to educate people is kind of different from running this as a business. So to me, you are running this also as a business. I know you do coaching and you also do speaking related to this. So share with us, what are some differences between hosting a podcast for fun and versus hosting a podcast for monetization to grow a business out of this. And so share
Yeah.
some differences with us and how you have leveraged your podcast to make this a profitable business.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, ideally, you can do both, right? Ideally, you can have
Yes.
fun and make money. And so, for me, I kind of take the Gary V, the Gainer Vaynerchuk route. There's some people that start podcasts and they build up an audience, and then they have sponsors or they have ads that help monetize the show and make money. And I think that's cool. And I think if you do that the right way, it can be beneficial for you. But I think the best way to win with podcasting is to really integrate it into your
Mhm.
business, really integrate it and kind of use it as a marketing piece. So it's like, I have a book that's coming out March 14th, and
I
instead
love
of me
it.
spending, yeah, thanks. Instead of me spending, I don't know, $15,000 on ads, I have built an audience. I have built a
Mhm.
podcast, it's been listened to millions of times, and I can just redeploy that attention onto the book or onto any kind of, product or service I happen to be selling. And so that's like the number one way that I would do it because, honestly, the matter of fact is, unless you're like Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss, you're probably not going to make a ton of money through advertising. You're probably just going to make pennies on the dollar. But if you can kind of use it as like your own sort of sustainable, um, like marketing mouthpiece, then I think you'll go very far into integrating it with your business. And then I
Mhm.
think there's some people that
I love
kind of start podcasts. They do it for fun, and I think that's great. But they don't really do anything with it. And I think at the beginning that's fine. For you to sort of explore. But I think it's just super important for you to build like a sustainable, loyal audience that like I said, you can then, like, whether it's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, then open up like maybe a different selling point, a product or service. Or you could go the other route, and like if your podcast gets really big, kind of in the route that I'm seeing, kind of approach like get hired for speaking at companies and
it.
conferences, write books, do other kind of things in the media that can make you money in different ways. And then, it's just like a prime example. Like, for example, again, Gary V and Vader Media, his company works with some of the biggest companies in the world, like Pepsi, General Electric, like a ton of these. And I can almost guarantee you, like, he probably got most of these because of his personal brand, because of
Mhm.
his podcast, because he's Gary V, not
I love
necessarily because, he has Vayner Media, like calling people and selling them. So if you can find a way to sort of organically integrate it into what you're already doing, it can really act as a turbocharger for your business.
Oh, I love those. Some really great tips and integration. I use my own show when I was launching my entrepreneurship immersion in Singapore. I definitely use my show to promote, and I love this. This show is sponsored by Classroom Without Walls, so I love that tip. It's a great one.
Exactly.
So I have this question from my dear friend Lucille, and she's asking, and which platform do you use to start a broadcast, to start a podcast? So I guess this is question is for those people who are thinking about starting a podcast. First, is it too late to start one in 2020? And second, if they want to get started, what are some basics that they need to know, the platform that they need to be on to start their podcast, and some basic gears that they need to have?
Yes, I mean, I think the most interesting one that I'll answer is it too late? So I think that, um, like, I remember when I started my podcast in 2017, people were already telling me that. Anybody that I told kind of online, they said, it's too late to start a podcast. Everybody already has a podcast. And then I friends about started a pod, like, because we were like, fine, for a second.
Oh, you're back. Yeah. So can you repeat what you mentioned earlier? Yeah. So is it too late to start? I think we lost you. Yeah.
Hey, can you hear me? Am I back?
Yes, I can hear you. You're back. Yeah.
Okay, my apologies. Um,
Um,
yeah, so I was saying, 2017 when I started my podcast, people were telling me it was way too late to start a show. And then I remember in 2012, I had started a podcast with a couple, and we were too early. So the moral of the story is, I don't think timing, you can always get it right, because the best time to do anything, and, if it's not right now, it's probably 2 years ago. But I mean, yeah, I definitely do not think it's too late to start a podcast. And I actually think the whole game of podcasting is just getting started.
hmm.
That's one big year. And when we live in a world like that, there's a lot of opportunity. And, when you kind of look at the industry, the way that I kind of look at the industry is, there's, it's kind of like an ocean, right? So there's whales, and then there's sharks, and then there is, like, sort of medium-sized fish like tuna, and there's smaller fish, and there's like crabs, and then there's like, little bacterial things. And so it's like, who are the whales? That's probably going to be like, the fortunes that have, that's probably the Fortune 500 companies that have like billions of dollars to spend on this. And then there is like the bigger sized fish, like the sharks, who are maybe, like successful companies. And then there are the smaller fish, which could potentially somebody like me or you. And then there's even smaller fish. And so the main idea is like, a whale is not going to go after the same thing a shark will go after. A shark will not go after the same thing that a smaller fish, in terms of its food, will go after. So, meaning it's like, if you look at a system like that, there is so much room on the plate for really all kinds of, honestly, for people to Google that. I mean, there's so many different platforms. You can use a website called Spreaker, 5 platforms. But ultimately, nobody's podcast is successful because of the hosting. At the end of the day, it's about consistency, you being authentic, and you really just, and not just another podcast.
Yeah, totally. So you mentioned Anchor. Anything else that you also recommend? Platforms that people can get started and to start hosting a podcast?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, other than somebody just starting out as a beginner, recommend Anchor.
Mm.
Limited works. I would probably recommend a website called Spreaker, which is just spelled speaker, but between the SP. Yeah, that one, or Lipson. If you can still hear me.
Yeah, SPRKER. Is that the name? I never heard of it.
SPREAKER
Okay.
.com.
Interesting. I'm going to check it out. Yeah. So I know we only have 30 minutes, and so we have only a few minutes left. So share with us. You have a book coming out. So what's the book about? And I know it's your passion product. And so tell us more about the book.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. So I had this book coming out March 14th called Screw Being Shy. and it's all about social anxiety, mental health, and transformation. Personally for me, podcasts, but mental health is a real main focus because I think a lot of people, especially entrepreneurs, get into being entrepreneurs because they're trying to sort out their own mental health. And personally, sort of like my life story, something I really struggled with is being shy, socially anxious. And that to me was like a first layer in me kind of beginning my entire journey. And I see so many people around the world that are comfortable and happy, um, sort of not happy, that's the wrong word, are comfortable and sort of complacent, being shy. And a lot of people don't really understand what being an introvert means, and they confuse being shy with being introverted. And obviously, if you like spending time by yourself, like that's all good. I'm an introvert at heart too. But I really made this book for people that are sort of trapped in their own minds, that want to talk to the world but don't know how to, that have been conditioned not to. And so yeah, so the electronic copy for that book, in terms of like a Kindle PDF version, I'm gonna release that for free. I'm gonna release the audiobook for free, and I'm gonna take 10% of the physical copy profits and donate them to the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention.
Oh.
And yeah, I mean, to me, it's just like I don't really see anybody, but this is just one example. Out of all the authors I interview and all the research that I do, I don't really see anybody that has approached social anxiety and being shy from the angle and from the perspective that I sort of had to learn by my own, without really having to learn, or without having to read too many books or read articles on the internet, just sort of having to find out on my own. And so, yeah, so people can check that out. My website is Mark Metry, MarkMetry. If they want to be notified of the book when it comes out, they can put in their email on my site.
Yeah, I just shared Mark's email on the screen. You guys can check it out, and if you want to learn more about the book, and definitely check it out. So, any parting piece of advice for those people who are struggling to get started to grow their podcast, or even to monetizing the podcast? So, some parting piece of advice that you want to share with us, Mark?
I would say reach out to me. And then I would say read some of the articles that I've written on podcasting on LinkedIn. And, I would just say to go all in, because it really hasn't even started yet, in terms of the whole podcast. Like, it's not even close to being late. It hasn't even started yet. And so there's plenty of room for people that look at me and they think I'm big. And I'm just like, I literally just started this a couple years ago. So that's what I would say.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Mark. And those of you, and this, as I mentioned, some of you just join us now, so I'm heading
We
to.
gotta do this.
What did you say? I lost you. Did you say something or?
I said we got to do it. I'm not in the car and I'm at my house.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Totally would
some
love to
pretty
do this.
severe lag going on. I just want to say I love everybody. Hope you
Yeah.
guys have the best of luck.
Oh, thank you so much, Mark. Thank you. Thank you. And for everyone still with us live right now, and some of you just joined, I will not be hosting another. I will not be hosting more interviews in December. So this is kind of the last one, and before the new year comes. And the reason is I will be heading to Singapore. Super excited for my entrepreneurship immersion program. We have people from 7 countries, 6 or 7, US, UK, Jamaica, India, Japan, and like all over the place. Really excited. We have a group of students, a group of speakers, and so I will be really busy in Singapore. But I will definitely go live. We'll be going live with some of our speakers, and to give you guys a taste. And I will be continuing this show in January, the second week in January, and I have a superstar, LinkedIn superstar, to join us to discuss, how your plan, how to grow your LinkedIn presence and personal brand on LinkedIn in 2020. And those of you who are still with us live, Oh, thank you, Brandon, and super excited. This is the very first program of my own school, Classroom Without Walls. I love how Mark mentioned, really leveraging my show to talk so much about my own program. And those of you who are really passionate, I know everyone here is an entrepreneur, innovative, and disruptors. So this year and a few months ago, I actually launched a second live streaming show called "What Is School For," and Friday, the show is always on Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. At noon Eastern Standard Time, I will have Jordan Paris, and he is another LinkedIn superstar, and he is like 21 or 22 years old. Very young, but highly accomplished. He also has his own podcast ranked number 15 in the category of education. And let me see if I can share. I'm going to share the screen of Jordan. And so he is going to discuss why. Okay, some of you are going to hate me if I say this. So he is going to discuss why college is a waste of time. And this is also going to be his topic for a TEDx talk next year. So if you are really passionate, let me share my screen. So if you are really passionate about education, especially disrupting education, or you want to be exposed to a different perspective on education or traditional education, so here's my friend Jordan. So here's my friend Jordan, and so he will be coming and we'll be discussing. He's such an amazing guy and has his own podcast, interview, as you can see, some really high profile, James Altucher, some really high profile people on his podcast, and Dan Locke, oh my God, right? So that is on this Friday at noon Eastern Standard Time, or 9 a.m. Pacific time. So that will be the last one. That will be the last live streaming interview I do before I head to Singapore. So thank you so much for supporting me on this journey. And 2019 is almost over. And together, today mark a 101 episode. I'm really thankful for people like Lucille, Ali, and everyone joining us live right now. Thank you so much for supporting me on this journey. And without you, I wouldn't be able to do any of this podcast. And so thank you so much, everyone. To express my gratitude, and I'm sending you my best wishes for a happy holiday, and I would love you too, Ali. Thank you. Happy holiday, and wish you continued success in 2020, and good health, good health, good happiness, and healthy and successful financially, spiritually, and physically, mentally. And so sending you my best wishes. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope today's short interview with Mark Metry give you some good ideas in terms of podcasting. If you are thinking about podcasting, definitely get started. And so see you. Join me live on Friday if you can. But if not, I'll be seeing you guys while I'm in Singapore. I will be doing some live quite live shows of the interviews and quick interviews with the speakers at my immersion program. So stay tuned, and thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy your day or evening, and I love you guys. Bye.